Greetings from Tokyo. My name is Daisuke Beppu, and if you will allow me a moment or two of your time, I'd like to present to you 10 more titles that I really like from the Criterion collection. So today I'd like to show 10 more titles from the Criterion collection, the current DVD and Blu-ray collection. These are chosen by me, and they are films that I really find compelling for one reason or another, or a combination of reasons. And as with any film in the Criterion collection, and as with any of these, top 10 favorite films from the Criterion collection, etc., as you know, the Criterion collection as it stands now, which is July 9th, 2018, starts at spine number 1 and ends around, I think, around 930s or so. So that's over 900 films, including the OOPs, by the way. So if you're going to pick just 10, I mean, you're always in a bind, because every time you pick 10, you think, oh gosh, I should have picked that one, I should have picked that one, or I should have picked that one. So you end up creating more lists, as it were. So, 10 is a very arbitrary number. I appreciate that. But, it seems to be the standard hallmark for favorites lists. So let me borrow that same standard or hallmark and present to you yet another top 10 favorites list. So the first one is spine number 712, Scanners. So this is a film directed by a gentleman by the name of David Cronenberg. 1981. Now, Scanners is a horror film, and it is a very intense film at places, so it's not recommended for anyone who is maybe has a weak stomach or doesn't like violent films. But if you are a person who enjoys a violent film, or who can watch a film and not be bothered by intense, quick scenes of violence, then this is a very easy recommendation to make. You've probably seen it already. This is one of those films where it feels like it's trying to be this huge epic of a film. It's trying to be this idea of scanner warriors with telepathic powers and telekinesis, and the ability to control other people with the power of their minds, etc. It's a really romantic subject in the field of science fiction. It's been done countless times, but there's something of a DIY, do-it-yourself, a homemade quality about this film. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it feels handmade. It doesn't feel overly processed. It feels like it was made with love and with care and with effort and blood, tears, and sweat. And you can see the effort when it comes off on the screen. You've got this whole, I don't know, I find it to be a really odd plot. I don't quite understand what the plot is of this film if you ask me about the specifics, with the relationship between Consec and the character of Revok, and the Patrick McGoohan character. I don't quite know if he's a good guy or a bad guy, but all those points aside, I think the plot is actually secondary to the whole the concept, the science fiction concept as it's presented here, which is basically scanner warriors with telekinetic powers, and this idea of renegade scanners and good scanners and bad scanners, and trying to find all these scanners and seeing how their powers work. And you've got the wonderful doses of special effects and gore and violence. So that's the whole package when you watch this film, Scanners. And so yes, so with that in mind, you're not going to be getting a really compelling story when you're watching this film. In fact, I think you're going to be getting a very confusing story with a lot of holes in it. But you're going to watch this film not for the story, but for the concept of this science fiction concept, which is, I think, brilliantly done. It is so brilliantly done, and it's fun and disturbing and really wild and crazy at times. So this is Scanners. Incidentally, I was working when I was in college. I remember, this is an interesting story. I was working in this British Arts Center in the town where my college was at, and I was working part-time at the front desk. And one time there was a Francis Bacon exhibition that was occurring at this British Arts Center, because it's a British artist. And so it was one afternoon, I was at the front desk, and in the entrance comes this gentleman, in this sort of heavy coat. He comes in, and he comes straight to the front desk, and I was sitting there at the time, and he looks at me and he says, in a very pleasant voice, he says, "Could you please tell me where the Francis Bacon exhibition is?" And I directed him to the hall where the exhibit was. So he left, and when he left, I realized immediately that this was Stephen Lack, the actor Stephen Lack, who plays Cameron Vale in the film Scanners. And so I was really amazed. I was starstruck because, Stephen Lack, Cameron Vale, Scanners. Wow, that's amazing. So after maybe an hour or so had passed, he had actually returned from the gallery and came back to the front hall and past the front desk where I was still at. And he came up, and he didn't have to do this, but he was such a polite man. And he said, "Thank you very much." And I said, and I just summoned up the courage, and I said, "Excuse me, but are you?" And he stopped me. He stopped me in mid-sentence. And he said, he waved his hand up like that, and he said, looked at me in the eye and smiled, and he said, "Yes, I am." And he nodded his head and walked away. Isn't that the coolest thing? It was as though he read my mind, like Cameron Vale in Scanners would read someone's mind. So it's almost, I was scanned by the ultimate scanner, Cameron Vale, in Scanners. That's to me one of the great run-ins with celebrity in my lifetime. I will never forget that story. I was scanned by Cameron Vale at the British Arts Center. Anyway, Scanners. This is a DVD, the 49th Parallel. This is Spine number 376. This is a film by the Archers, Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, 1941. So this is a wartime film. And what a wallop. This packs a wallop. This is a great film. This is such a rich, complex film, and it's so deceptive. It's a straightforward action espionage suspense thriller, really, a wartime suspense thriller. But it has some interesting characteristics. Well, first of all, it has a really interesting cast. Laurence Olivier, Raymond Massey, etc., Eric Porter, wonderful, brilliant villain. And the whole plot is you've got these Nazis who are trapped behind their enemy lines. So from the Nazis' point of view, it's Canada. So they're stranded in Canada and they're trying to escape. They're trying to escape out of Canada. And that's the story. And they go from one adventure to another adventure to another adventure. It's a very episodic presentation of the story. But it's amazing to me. This is an amazing film to me in so many ways, not least of which is the fact that this is from the Nazis' point of view. We are, as viewers, I don't know if we're expected to sympathize with the Nazis because they're quite villainous, some of them at least, but others are quite sympathetic, and we actually are sympathetic to their plight as they go from episode to episode to episode. So I don't know how to feel about that. That's a really complicated way to watch a film, and I love how a film can challenge me like this. And this film, in that respect, is quite challenging. On the one hand, it's just it's a great thriller, espionage, spy action thriller. But on the other hand, there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye, and it has also a kind of do you know the story, the Agatha Christie story, And Then There Were None? About the people who are on the island and they're being killed one at a time. So it has that same kind of feel, where you have this group, this large group, and one by one they're slowly dwindling down. It's this very suspenseful and full of great tension. But again, they are the Nazis, so we're sympathizing with the Nazis, but not all the time, because each episode deals with the sort of the Allied side, as it were, and so we do side with them. It's a really interesting concept. We are following the Nazis, but are we sympathizing with them, or are we hoping that they won't win? I think it's a mixture, actually, which is a really, I don't quite know how to feel about that. But this is just a capsule review way of me to say that this is a very complex and still highly entertaining film. It's highly recommended. I think it's a film that probably doesn't get discussed as much amongst the Powell and Pressburger films, but I think it should. Now, it is only on a DVD, so if you're averse to buying DVDs, if you are only interested in Blu-ray, I don't know what else to tell you, but if you can make an exception for this DVD, I highly recommend it. This is really fantastic. The 49th Parallel. Spy number 835. The Valley of the Dolls. Or is it no, I'm sorry, there's no the, so it's Valley of the Dolls, excuse me. Valley of the Dolls. Now, this is probably, next to Fishing with John, this is probably the next most funniest film, or the funniest film in the Criterion collection after Fishing with John, in my opinion. So Valley of the Dolls, it's not a masterpiece, but that's not why I love it. I love it because it is not a masterpiece. I love it because it's trashy and really kind of really all over the place. It's quite a mess of a film, and therefore it's brilliant. It's one of those films where you just can't believe what's going on, and the continual development of from one kind of ludicrous situation to another until it explodes in this whole situation of over the top ludicrous drama, which is brilliant. That is the essence of great drama. It's the idea of heightened reality, of things that are so unbelievable. They are too unbelievable to be believed, right? So therefore, this is a brilliant film. Patty Duke, man, she sings, the way she sings those songs, man, that's brilliant. And the Susan Hayward's the Tree Song. What is it? I'll plant my own tree and I'll make it grow. And she's like doing her struts. She's her body is sort of elongated in a really inhuman way. It's almost as though she's made of rubber or something. It's and Patty Duke and her necklace, and oh man, and the great dialogue, which I can't repeat now because I'm going to spoil it. But this is one of those gems of a film. I don't know if it's getting a lot of love from the quote-unquote cinephile crowds, but it really should get more love, and I hope it does. Valley of the Dolls. Ah, Valley of the Dolls. This is great. This is great. I'm Neely O'Hara. Neely O'Hara. I don't know. I'm really sorry about that expression there, but I just wanted to express to you just how much I really adore this film, and it's a really awful film, and I love it all the more for it. I love this film so much. Valley of the Dolls. All right. Spy number 484. Yes. So, Jeanne Dielman, 23, Quai de Commerce, 1080, Bruxelles. All right. This is the famous film by Chantal Akerman. Rest in peace. And this is, how shall I put it? It is one of the most astonishing suspense films in the Criterion collection. It is a true suspense film. I mean, I think it's one of those films that it's an art house suspense film of the highest caliber. And what I mean by that is, from the outset, there is so much tension and curiosity that is engendered by just the simple way this film presents its story, or deceptively simple. It seems simple, but in fact, there is so much going on. And if you watch this film, I just urge you to be patient with it and let it just sink in. Just go with the flow of this film. Believe me, without going into too many details, what I urge you to do is just watch each detail very carefully. The way that the order in which certain chores are being performed, the way in which the main character Jeanne Dielman is performing them, the way she does her usual routines, going in and out of rooms, the way she prepares for meals, the way she sits and waits for her son, etc., and when she goes out and performs chores and comes back, and all this against the backdrop of her sort of quote-unquote real job. I mean, that's a really terrible way of saying it, but it's her occupation, or the way that she earns money, as it were. That is a key element. And if you keep that in mind and you watch this film, there comes a point when you realize, oh my gosh, something so terrible and intense is happening right now. And when you reach that moment, it's an amazing moment, which is why I highly, highly urge you to get this film. Jeanne Dielman, 23 Quai de Commerce, 1080, Bruxelles. This is a film that every person who calls him or herself a cinephile should watch and watch and watch again, because there is so much tension and there's so much just drama within the frame, the still frame. Jeanne Dielman, one of the most suspenseful, brilliant films in the Criterion collection. Spy number 862. Canoa, A Shameful Memory. Felipe Casals is the name of the director. Now, I want you to remember this. Felipe Casals, 1976. This is Mexico. This is a Mexican film. Now, I had never seen this. I had never heard about it until Criterion released it not so long ago. Being a completionist and a fan of Criterion, I had to buy it. I didn't know much about it, and I put it into my Blu-ray player and played it. And just shy of 2 hours later, I was absolutely just numb. My body was numb, and the reason why is because this is one of the most frightening horror films, I would say. Yes, it is a horror film, and it's a brilliant horror film, and it is truly scary. It is truly scary. It has a it has a faux documentary style to lure you in, and when you are lured in, suddenly it just slashes at you and just doesn't let go until it's over. And it plays with your mind in that way, with the way in which violence erupts, this whole idea of the mob mentality, the horrors of the mob, as it were. Religious fervor, economic turmoil and strife, people driven to their limits, both physically and emotionally and mentally. It's sort of a hot political climate, all come together into this great pot, suddenly explodes, and you're left with just horror and blood and mayhem and carnage. Canoa is an unforgettable experience. Again, if you are not into violent films or horror films, it's not like a horror film, but I use that sort of more as a metaphor for how truly frightening it is. So if you are not into intense films, please do not get this. But if you can stomach such an intense film, you will not forget this. I promise you will not forget this once you finish this film. Canoa, A Shameful Memory. Please, I urge you, please give it your attention if you haven't already. Spy number 99. This is a different kind of horror film, as it were, but it's still just as effective, I think. Gimme Shelter. This is the documentary. Yes, the Rolling Stones documentary. Altamont. If you like the Rolling Stones, obviously this is going to be a key documentary because it is a very traumatic and noteworthy moment in Rolling Stones history, as well as modern American history, I would dare say. It's quite a frightening situation. And you have the Rolling Stones, who are at the center of this real whirlwind of chaos, which, I mean, it's not really their fault. All they're doing is trying to entertain, but here they are in the center of this thing, and just all of a sudden you have this just mayhem that just slowly builds until you've got this real eruption of just tragedy and violence. And it's a marvel to behold, I'm telling you. It is a horror film, I think. It's quite frightening. There are some scenes in here that stay with you for a long time. Whenever you see the Hell's Angels depicted in this film, you always have a sense of a little bit of trepidation. At least I do, and maybe that's a fault in my own perceptions and my own sort of misgivings. But there is one shot in particular, and it comes maybe around the latter half of the film, maybe the last third of the film, when the performance is going on in earnest, and you have a close-up of one of the Hells Angels people as the band is singing Under My Thumb, the famous song Under My Thumb. And then as they're performing, the camera just goes to one of these guys who's a Hell's Angel, and he's sort of at the front of the stage, maybe looking on, and you can just see his face. He's listening to the music or something, and just suddenly his face turns into like a wild animal or someone possessed or something just really potentially horrific is bubbling inside of him. And you realize all of a sudden just how naked and vulnerable the Rolling Stones are on that stage. It's amazing that, I mean, there was a lot of violence and a lot of tragedy, but it's amazing that it didn't erupt into more violence than it did, if you think about it. But still, if you think about that moment, it's just bone-chilling, which is why I highly recommend this film if you haven't seen it already. Gimme Shelter. Man, this is a wonderful film. I'm so glad the Criterion Collection had this so early. This is Spy number 99. It's a really wonderful film. So, Spy number 307, Naked. Now, in a previous video, I had made some comments about the film Life is Sweet, which is also directed by Mike Leigh. This was the film I think he made after Life is Sweet, so Naked. After Life is Sweet, this is my second favorite Mike Leigh film, I think. And the reason is it's so driven by its thesis of cold brutality, and this thesis of cold brutality is further driven and enlarged and it's, how should I put it, it sort of explodes on the screen by virtue of one performance, and that performance is by David Thewlis as Johnny. And Johnny is he's unlike any character I think you'll see in a film in a long time. He is one of those unforgettable, iconic characters in all of cinema. You see him and you are so charmed by him and you hate him, and he is such a despicable character and he does so many terrible things, and yet you oddly want to root for him and you want him to succeed as he travels the nighttime London landscape, goes from place to place, visiting one person to the next. And you realize that he is brilliant and he is so doomed, and it's that real tremendous combination of opposing characteristics that makes Johnny, as performed by David Thewlis, to be just one of the most iconic, unforgettable characters in cinema. By far. That line, I mean, for those of you who know it, again, I don't give too many details lest I spoil it, but there's that one line when one of the characters says to him, right, around the middle of the film, right, don't waste your life, right? Don't waste your life, man. That, gosh, in essence, that is just that's the film right there. And what will Johnny do in response to that? How will he react? Because you know that he is a smart man and he is an intelligent man, but there is something holding him back. And throughout the story, we might get a glimpse as to why he is the way he is. Truly remarkable. Naked. Truly remarkable. Oh, this is the Blu-ray, but this is also the DVD here. It's also a very intense film, filled with scenes of quite intense sex and violence. So if you are not into that, maybe you should maybe just stay away from this film. But if that doesn't bother you, then please, by all means, consider visiting this film if you haven't already. Spy number 322, Mr. Arkadin. Okay. So this is the film by Orson Welles, which is basically just a kind of a thriller mystery, maybe film noir type of film. So it's a fun film in the sense that it's like a film noir mystery, and who doesn't like a good film noir mystery, right? So you should get it for that reason alone. But the reason why this is an incredible film is not necessarily because the film itself is really great. I mean, it's good, but I wouldn't call it great. But it's it's like a hall of mirrors, because you've got so many versions of the film, and you've got 3 versions here in this release, which is really fascinating. So you're watching one version, and then maybe a month or so after that, you might want to visit the second version and then the final version, and you realize that there's a lot there are a lot of differences that you can't quite catch at the beginning, and so you've got great supplements that'll help you with documentaries about the different various versions, some of which are not even included in the set. Which is, I think, one thing that I think makes Orson Welles such a fascinating filmmaker, is that he is so playful and he doesn't make it easy for the audience. And that is certainly true for Mr. Arkadin. You know, there are certain yeah, I guess what I would say about the film is that it has a real sense of devil may care attitude. You know, it's almost as though Orson Welles wanted to make a film, but he didn't care about how he made it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think he cared so much about film that maybe he forgot about making a film, if that makes any sense. I mean that in the most complimentary way. And what I mean by that is that maybe he was so smart that he didn't realize that maybe he was just 100 steps ahead of everyone else, and just so he's just, you know, on all cylinders here. And his characterization of Mr. Arkadin is at once goofy and brilliant and quite frightening and psychotic in some places. And he's got the really audacious makeup, which makes him look like a, you know, those like a playing card, you know, the playing cards, the deck of cards, and you've got like the queen and the jack and the king. Well, he looks like the king in a playing card. He's really kind of goofy, but there's something hypnotic about his performance as Arkadin, because he commands the screen. There's no doubt about it. You can't take your eyes off him. It's amazing. And even the theatricality of his performance just makes him all the more epic, and just he consumes the screen. It's amazing. It's truly amazing. So if you just want a simple, straightforward, maybe mystery film noir, you've got it here. If you want some example of the sort of you know, why Orson Welles drove many film scholars crazy, this is a perfect example. If you want an example of Orson Welles, the actor, and his awesome screen presence, this is your answer. And if you want something that is a wonderful presentation from the Criterion Collection, man, you should get this set. It's a DVD set, but it's got the 3 versions, and it has the great special features and the book, which is another story in itself. You know, I'm so confused as to what comes first, the book or this version or that version. I don't even know what to believe. Man, isn't that great, the way a film can just drive you bonkers like this? Mr. Arkadin is that film. Anyway, 322, Mr. Arkadin, aka Confidential Report. Yeah. Spy number 339, Yi, Edward Yang. This is from 2000. And in a previous video, I had lauded the great film A Brighter Summer Day, also by Edward Yang. But when I was doing that, this popped up in my brain and in my heart, and it didn't leave. So I revisited it again, and I realized just how lovely this film is. Again, it's hard to explain. It's essentially a family drama, and it's a modern family drama, but that is probably the worst description of the film, because it is so much more than that. And as I say with A Brighter Summer Day, this film, Yi, you watch it and you realize the filmmaker is a master, because he knows so much about the human condition, and he's so wise about the human condition. There is so much happiness and sadness enveloped in a single package. It's so amazing, the landscape of the human heart that is traveled by the focus of this film. It's truly a miracle. It's truly a miracle. And it's the sort of film where it just, you watch it and it breaks your heart and crushes your soul and just kicks you when you're down and just beats you up and just breaks you apart. And then it slowly puts you back together again, and your heart is whole. and maybe you don't get all the answers, and maybe you feel sad for certain characters, and other characters might not have turned out as well as you might have hoped, but overall you feel a sense of reservation and hope and inspiration and belief in what is good, right? And all this is basically, yes, the mapping of the human heart, right? It's a real fabulous film. You know, my favorite scene, again, I don't want to go into details lest I spoil it, but yes, there's a Japanese actor by the name of Issei Ogata, and he plays a very interesting character in this film. And there's a scene between him and the main character, NJ, which is one of the most magical scenes I think I've seen in any film. Gosh, Edward Yang, you made so many miracles. Gosh, I think, you know, we owe you so much, Edward Yang. I really want Edward Yang to be known more, and I want him to be spoken of more. I think he really deserves to be up there with the great directors, Ozu. I think he's, I don't know, I don't want to say anything more than that, but yes, he is truly a master, and he's so missed. Oh gosh, Edward Yang, Yi. 725. All right. Eraserhead. So this is a film directed by David Lynch, who's an American filmmaker. And how do I explain Eraserhead to one who hasn't seen it? It's almost like, you know, Eraserhead is to cinema like, you know, air is to earth. I don't know. It's one of those elemental films. I don't know. It's a film that it's so profound that I feel like it's always been around. It's just one of those films that it formed a bedrock of my own cinematic journey and education. And why is that? And I think it's because it just presents a world that is just so at once bizarre and foreign and alien, and yet it is so tied down in the wonderful quirkiness of everyday physics and the wonderful oddness of sort of humanity. I mean, the human creature is a very odd creature indeed, if you think about it. And David Lynch puts a magnifying glass to that and just turns up the intensity in a way that is both charming and quite revolting in some places. But that's the thing about David Lynch. You know, I mean, everyone says he's quirky, he's odd, it's Lynchian, it's so cool, and it's fantastic. And of course, I agree with that. But I think more fundamentally, it's, you know, human nature is very complicated. It's not just simple black and white and good and bad and like or dislike. No, there's a lot of complications, and that's because, you know, we are formed by our surroundings and our own impulses and desires and emotions. But then we are constantly bombarded by externalities and people around us and the environment around us and things that we don't want to do but are forced to do, etc., etc., etc. So this all creates this whole form of confusion and uncertainty about who we are and what we're supposed to do. And yes, that is what Eraserhead is, right? I think that's what the Jack Nance character is. He's just a guy who, right, who am I? What am I doing? What is my purpose? That's the look on his face. And he tries to resolve it in a way that he thinks it's simple and straightforward. But in fact, it's not simple and straightforward. And that is such a great metaphor for life, everyday life. Nothing is as simple as it seems. Which is why this is such a fundamentally important film, because it is at once fantastic and amazing and so otherworldly, but at the same time so intimate and so close to the human condition and everyday life and everyday struggle, which is an amazing balancing act that David Lynch performs. I mean, you've got the whole idea of parenthood, rearing children, extramarital affairs, love in a loveless marriage, cooking, how to deal with in-laws, work. This is all like everyday stuff, everyday drama stuff, but it's all in the guise of this wonderfully bizarre and just odd hodgepodge of amazing visuals and yes, and everything else Lynchian. Eraserhead is an unforgettable experience, and if you're watching this video, chances are you've seen this film so many times. But if you haven't seen this film for whatever reason, you just stop the video, turn off your computer or phone right now, leave your house or walk to the nearest Barnes & Noble store or go to Amazon or whatever and buy this film right now, and then go home and watch it, because it is that important. This is essential sustenance for all cinephiles. Eraserhead. So, I think that's about it. Again, I apologize for my rambling nature. I don't mean to do that. But I guess this is just a way for me to try to express how much I really enjoy these films, and other films as well in the Criterion collection. I wish I had more time to show you all of them. But alas, I know your time is limited, and so I don't want to keep you any further. If you have any questions or comments, as always, you can leave me a message down below, I think, and I'll be very happy to reply as soon as possible. If for whatever reason I don't reply, I really apologize. I don't mean to. It's just maybe I just accidentally missed your comment, or I just didn't get a chance to reply in the way I wanted to. So if I've missed any of your comments so far, I'm really sorry. Just send me the comment again, and I'll be sure to reply. I really want to reply to all of the comments, because it's so exciting for me to learn from all of you guys, and just be constantly really reevaluating how I feel about certain films that maybe you think are not worthy enough, or the opposite, maybe some films that I really despise, but films that you champion. And so that clash of opinions is something that I really cherish, because that will help me to reevaluate my own views. Maybe I was wrong, and if so, comments like yours have helped me out of the abyss. So I encourage you to leave comments about any of the films I've discussed, or any other recommendations that you have. I'd love to hear them. Truly, I would. If that's not your cup of tea, if you want to speak to me more directly, you can find me on Facebook. If you want to private message me, just search for me under my name, Daisuke Beppu, and I'll be happy to reply as best I can. In the meantime, thank you so much again. Again, I hope you watch a lot of great films and just enjoy yourself, enjoy your life. Please be happy and be safe and be healthy and be well. And I look forward to talking with you again very soon. Cheers.